Okay, this is a new plane that I just completed. I call it the Blunt 300. The reason being it's got a blunt section between the two wing halves, very similar to a pop wing or flying wing. All the radio equipment goes in the blunt section, and the general proportions of the plane are the same as an extra 300. The wing shape is the same as an extra 300. The blunt section is made of 3/32 plywood on the sides and on the bottom. And all the radio equipment, the batteries, receiver, stabilizer, BEC, all the servo connections, everything are in the blunt section, so it's very convenient. I don't have a cover on this yet, but I probably will put a cover on it for just streamlining later on. The blunt section, if you buy a commercial blunt section, it has interlocking edges, and it also has tabs on the bulkheads and slots in the sides for interlocking the thing together. But if you're laser cutting, it's easy to do, but if you just have a scroll saw and a drill, you can't do that sort of thing. So what I did was I used 1/4-inch thick bulkheads. That allows me to drill from the sides 1/8-inch holes and then put in pins of 1/8-inch dowels. So that's called pegging or something like that, pinning. But so I have 2 pins on every side, the 2 sides and the bottom on each bulkhead. Makes the unit very strong, and it really holds it together very well. The front section is for batteries. I made it specifically for 3S2200 20C batteries, which I have a lot of. I use 2 of them. You can see the carbon spar 1/2 inch that goes through the back of that section, and that is also the balance point for the wing and for the airplane as a whole. The center section is for the radio, and there is a hole in the floor for the servo leads to come up from the tail. I've got an 8-channel receiver, Free Sky, and Eagle Tree stabilizer, which needs to be fairly close to the CG, so it's just an inch or so behind the carbon spar. And then the third section is pretty much open. I just have the 5-volt BEC in there right now, but you could put video transmitter or other equipment in there. The wing is attached to the blunt section with a 1/4-inch nylon bolt that you can see there. It goes, it connects to a 1/4-inch plywood plate that is buried in the foam of the wing, about 1 inch from the end. And then there's also an anti-rotation pin, which is a 1/4-inch dowel in this case. The airfoil is a NACA 0015, which is a symmetrical 15% thick. This is EPP 1.3 pound foam. I had the foam cores cut at flyingfoam.com. They do a really nice job, and they also put in the hole for the 1/2-inch spar, which just fits perfectly. The wing is then laminated with 5mm laminating foam, and you could use monocoat or packing tape. I use packing tape for a little bit of color with different patterns on the top and the bottom of the wing. The only lead that comes out of the blunt section is the power cable that goes to the ESC, and that has to go through the top of the fuselage and the bottom. It connects to the ESC, which is on the bottom of the fuselage. I like foam wings because you can bury everything in the foam. And here you can see that the servo is, I cut a pocket with a soldering gun, and then the wiring is also buried in the foam. The elevator servo is attached to the Coroplast elevator and stabilizer with double-sided foam, and then it also has a wire tie on there to make sure it doesn't come off in a hard landing or a crash. I'm using .047 wire linkages with Z-bends on the end, using a Dubro bender. And the rudder servos same way. So the leads from the servos just go to the back of the fuselage tube. I'm using a Experimental Airlines type fuselage tube. It's about 2.5 inches square. Just a straight tube. I didn't taper it at all. And so the whole inside of the fuselage is empty, except for a couple of wires coming up from the back. And then here's the attachment point on the fuselage to the blunt section. This is the, there's 2 nylon bolts, one in the front and one in the back. There is a 1/4 inch plywood plate that's about 1 inch wide and the width of the fuselage glued to the foam. And then all you do is you just drill and then tap with a 1/4-20 hand tool. These are the rudder and elevator servo leads that come up through the bottom of the blunt section up to the receiver. So that's the plane. I've got quite a few flights on this already. Flies pretty nice. Fairly stable, fairly maneuverable. I'm using an 840 Turnigy Aerodrive motor with a 14.6 prop, and that's fed by 2 3S2200s. Gives me about 10 or 12 minutes of flight time, and so that's about it.